Hi everyone, this is Yasmin from SA Media Group's 25th Annual Global MilSatcom Conference, where this year we're hosting the new Graduate Space Careers Stream, delivered in partnership with the SA Foundation and UK SADS. The stream will be taking place on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 8th of November in London. And today I'm delighted to be joined by one of our esteemed speakers, Professor Ojha OBE, and Director of Championing Space at the UK Space Agency. And Professor Ojha will be giving the keynote opening address of the stream on why space, exploring the landscape and how you can get involved. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Yasmin.
Professor, we have a few questions for you today to hear more about your insights in the industry. And to start off, what impact do you hope to make by being involved in this year's Graduate Space Career Stream?
It's a great question. And to be honest, Yasmin, it boils down to three fundamental priorities. And it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to speak not only to this conference, but to a critical audience that we need if we're to sustain and grow our space sector to its full potential. So quite simply, my foci are going to be platforming what the UK space sector is. Secondly, allied to that first point, challenging a lot of perspectives that people understandably have about our sector. But ultimately, what it's all about is trying to drive the flow towards a greater potential workforce, because this is one of the biggest challenges, whether it's in defence space or in civil space, in translating our ambition and translating our capabilities into achievable and sustainable targets for the future. Skills is the big bottleneck issue.
Absolutely, it's such an important thing to be speaking to students directly in this space and helping to grow the entire landscape. And on that, what topic will you be addressing at the stream?
So for me, first of all, I'm going to give an overview of what we mean by the space sector and space, for want of a better term, space stuff, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, even from people who are already involved in one part of the sector, let alone a wider graduate audience. And it's understandable. I think quite often as a sector, we've not been good at getting our messaging out there as such. The phrase I use is sometimes we're in our own echo chamber. So that's one of the big challenges that we face. I then want to talk about the sorts of skill sets that we're looking for in the space sector, because again, without giving away too much from my keynote, it's a lot broader than a lot of people realize. And it's not just coding skills. It's not just physics and engineering, even though they're my subjects and the ones that I'm very, very close to. We've got a far broader range of competencies that we need. And then finally, I want to talk about the types of way that you can get into the sector, because again, there are so many varied entry routes, and you don't necessarily have to just go and work for example, the UK Space Agency. You know, you could work in industry, you could work in academia, you could work in an SME enterprise, you could work in a different way. And so those are the areas that I want to focus, all with looking at raising awareness and getting more people considering the space sector as being part of their future, because that's what we need.
Fantastic. And I think you've somewhat touched on it there, but with it being such an expanding landscape, why do you think it's so important for us to be talking more about a career in the space industry?
Quite frankly, we are competing against so many other sectors. So let's take two extreme examples. The person who goes to university or is already working through an apprenticeship or working in an allied sector who's interested in space, but they think, you know, there's not a part for me. And I think that's a really important thing, because I've had experience when I've spoken to, I'm thinking of one conference in particular, hundreds of really talented postgraduate and postdoctoral engineers, all of whom we would love to have in the space sector, but many of them thought, you know, that there's no place for somebody like me. But secondly, we're in a marketplace where there are other industries or other sectors in industry competing against us in the space sector, offering some really lucrative propositions. And so quite frankly, as a sector, we have to up our game in terms of how we're going to recruit and the attractiveness of the proposition. Now, it's all based on, you know, this is not a sort of marketing smokescreen. This is based upon, you know, real senses of satisfaction that people get, you know, in general. the level of love for the job, and I'm using a very, very crude sort of way of putting it there, that we find in the space sector, from my experience, is significantly higher than in other sectors. Now, sometimes that sort of obviates against, yeah, well, maybe the salary levels aren't as high. Actually, in industry, the salary levels can be really good. And so I want to wrap all of those together to try to address that point about why all of the audience members, even if they've never considered it before, should be looking at one aspect of maybe only for a short period of time, but hopefully for much longer, a career in the space sector, because it's much more diverse than people think in terms of people. It's much more diverse than people think in terms of the capabilities we need. And in terms of the markets we're operating, once again, it is so much more varied than many people may realize.
Absolutely. And I guess final question, Professor, why do you think Global MilSatcom is an important platform for the community?
I think MilSatcom is absolutely vital because we're now, certainly from the UK perspective, we're in an area where, you know, for decades we've had civil space programs, we've had defence-related space programs. And occasionally there have been interlaps between the two, but we're now part of a much more coherent government strategy going forwards where the two are allied together. Now you have a challenge there because when you look, for example, traditionally at the academic community and traditionally at the defence community, they're looking at each other through some prisms of stereotypes maybe, and you know, perhaps 30 years ago there was some element of truth there. It's an aspect that I'll be exploring in my presentation. But the point is, if we can recalibrate those prisms, then we're going to have much more partnership. I mean, people often talk about dual use, the way you can use certain capabilities for defense purposes as well as academic purposes. And so what I want to do is to utilize this platform we've got to get the defense community a lot more aware of our civil space capabilities and vice versa, highlight that to graduates. And most importantly for me personally as well, it's an opportunity for me to learn more, because I think we've got some really exciting potential in the future, but catalyzing a much greater, I would say, an order of magnitude change in which the defense community is working with the civil space community. That's where we're going to get impact. And just lastly on that point, you know, very often we're thinking of defense space and people's, especially an older generation like myself, as soon as you talk about defense space, what comes to mind is 1980s Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, Ronald Reagan and stuff. This, in my mind, you know, defense space is about using space for safeguarding our way of life. And when we put it that way, putting aside, you know, the events of the last 18 months that I think have raised the priority for defense space in a lot of the general public's minds in a way that it didn't do before. We've got a brilliant opportunity with Global MilSatcom, and it's a real honour for me to be able to take part.
Fantastic. Well, Professor Ojha, was so excited to hear more from you, and I think you're going to bring such insightful information for the students at the stream. We can't wait to hear more from you, from all of our speakers at this year's Graduate Career Stream at the 25th Annual Global MilSatcom Conference. It's taking place on the 8th of November in London, so if you'd like to find out more and to book your place, head to the SAE Media Group website. And we're so excited to see you there, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a real honour to be able to take part, and I really look forward to meeting as many people as I can there. Thanks very much again.
Thank you so much.